The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Wrestling to the Max Smackdown Review.
Hello and welcome to the Wrestling to the Max Smackdown Live review for March 7, 2017. I got the date right this time. And I am your host, Sean Garmer, and with me, as always, back from deathly illness, Mr. Paul Leazar.
Heyo.
And here, because apparently Talking Smack was so awesome, he had to be on. And of course, always welcome. But just it makes me laugh because he's just like, my only reason for being on is because Talking Smack was great. Gary Vaughn.
Yeah, I mean, Apollo Crews, that announcement blew me out of the water. I mean, I wasn't ready for WrestleMania, but now I am. He's a part of the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, guys. I'm in now. I was going to watch something else instead, like reruns of Seinfeld, but now with Apollo Crews and that, I'm kidding. But
I'm
no,
about to say, was the Mojo one not exciting enough for you?
No, Mojo, come on. He's not Apollo, right? No. No, the SmackDown was good too, but the Talking Smack, especially the end, was super cool. So I can't wait till we talk about all this. It's going to be so much fun.
Well, we won't have to wait too long to talk about it because they get into that very early in the show. But to start us off, as I make sure I'm looking at the correct show here. They left us sort of in a lurch last week as to what they were going to do about Randy Orton, AJ Styles, who's going to WrestleMania to face Bray Wyatt. Well, they basically come out to say, Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan both come out to say that, hey, we support one and the other. They both bring up their points. Bryan has the point about the Royal Rumble winner has always been the one that gets a shot at Mania. That AJ has won. He fairly won his shot. Well, it's going to be AJ Styles and Randy Orton in the main event to see who will face Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania. Then, of course, AJ Styles has a problem with that. Sort of his MO for this whole ordeal is he wants his shot at WrestleMania that he already earned. Randy Orton says that, you know what, AJ Styles may have won all these matches, but I'm always one RKO away from getting to WrestleMania. And since we're already talking about it, get into the main event here, which this was a damn really good match between these two. Of course, ending with AJ making Randy Orton miss as he was trying to go for the phenomenal forearm. So then he tries to go for the springboard 450, rolls through, but Randy Orton is able to lift up AJ and hit the RKO to get the win. Lots more chanting for AJ here than Randy Orton, and that's interesting because it almost seemed like they were trying on purpose to make Randy Orton work heel here, and of course it makes sense after he just burned the man's house down. But interesting that maybe they're going to make Bray Wyatt be the face in this whole thing.
I think there is a lot to that because that promo that he cuts backstage when Renee Young interviews him in the locker room, it still feels like he has that Wyatt family aura around him. Like, it didn't seem like he thought he was out of the family. It just seems like he wants to be the top guy in the family, not Bray, which I found an interesting take on this because it's not like he's He doesn't think he's out. He just thinks he wants to be the top guy now. The match is great. All that stuff is awesome. But if Randy's going to work heel and all this, that's a very interesting way to go about all this. And I don't exactly... I mean, I don't think it's hard to make a man who had his house burned down a sympathetic face in Bray Wyatt, but Bray's been a heel for a long time, and that'll certainly be interesting. If Bray's the face going into this, then how is all this going to shake down in the next couple of weeks?
We have seen WrestleMania crowds in the past, be a bit unorthodox and, do chant for Bray Wyatt. So, I mean, if there is one time a year where you might be able to really pull this off, WrestleMania might be the time.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Of course, the really the Smarky fans, that they all really love Bray Wyatt because we've followed him for a long time, and you really kind of like the fact that he's finally getting an opportunity to do something great, like be a world champion. So I think that's a positive thing, and now he does kind of become a face out of kind of what we're talking about here. And it is kind of a weird dynamic because I think, like what Paul was alluding to, is this guy's been a heel for so long, and to kind of imagine him as a babyface, it's still hard for me in a way because I like him as a heel. I like that creepy factor that he brings, and it's just hard for me to imagine him playing the babyface and doing things, especially since his whole character is built around this dark realm, right? Like this situation where he's a cult leader that's out to get people, but hey, I'm the good guy, like me. Randy Orton, on the other hand, has been a heel too for quite a while, and he's been a babyface, but he's a little bit believable because he's this good-looking guy that goes out there and can woo everyone, all the ladies and all that. But then on the other hand, he can be this jerk that no one likes. So it's a weird situation we're in, but one that I don't think it's going to be too strange because you see the people love what Bray Wyatt does, right? They love to turn their phones on for him, the flashlights. They love to root for him. So I think it's going to be okay. I don't think it's going to be uncomfortable watching him in this situation, and I'm fine with it. And I do want to point out really quickly before we go on with anything else, Paul just mentioned the fact that Randy Orton acted like he wasn't out of the family. I think Luke Harper's the same way. Luke Harper still does his whole video packages and everything with these creepy lights and all that kind of stuff. So is it one of those things once in the Wyatt family, always in the Wyatt family? I don't know.
I think maybe with Harper, he doesn't know anything else.
Yeah,
so,
and that's a good point.
I mean, Eric Rowan's doing them too on his, he's sort of being creepy, doing that thing with some videos that they've shot with him and in the Performance Center.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a bit clear that Harper is out just because he's gotten attacked by both and he is actively sought to get revenge on both. And I don't think it was ever so much about I'm still in the family. It's just I don't know any other way than to not be who I am right now, but I'm clearly out of the Wyatt family. It doesn't feel like that with Randy, who is just wanting to take the title from Bray. They're going about this a completely different way than I ever thought they would. Because instead of Randy actively trying to get into the family to burn it down from the inside, quite literally, he hasn't talked about any of that yet. It's just been, I still feel like I'm Randy Orton from the Wyatt family. I just want it to be the Orton family almost, Yeah.
Which I like. I like the fact that he's bringing some other kind of dynamic than one that was very predictable, right? I mean, let's be honest. When we talked about, Raw yesterday, there was a few things that we talked about that we had been predicting for months, right? And they are taking place. For this situation, it's kind of predictable, but not completely. They're throwing little wrinkles in here that we did not see coming, and I really didn't see that coming, so I appreciate that. And now you still have that care and that intrigue of this story, and you guys both have alluded to this is the best storyline that SmackDown has. And for me, it continues to be that way. And I like it a lot. I'm still enjoying it. And, we'll see how this goes along further. But right now, babyface Bray Wyatt is not such a bad thing, I don't think. But I'm still a little worried, even though I say that.
Mm-hmm. I think on the flip side of this argument, too, if we're going to talk about AJ some, Shane was the one taking up for his side. So where is this going to turn into a match for those two?
Well, I mean, you saw it on Talking Smack. That's all you need right there, was AJ getting in Shane's face and challenging him in the backstage area, very much like we saw Daniel Bryan and Triple H. So,
you know what I love about this, Sean, and it's weird, but watching that, I just love the way they produced it. I can't lie. I think they did a really good job of
going
showcasing
to the back area, and I guess Michael Hayes just wears that stuff all the time.
Well, even Road Dogg is back there, and I love the fact that Daniel Bryan even pointed out in real life. I mean, let's be honest. What really happened with Daniel Bryan, and he talked about this on Talking Smack about him and Triple H going nose to nose, and the fact that Road Dogg was there to break it up. That's what I love about this. They kind of got very real, and now you kind of have a reason to kind of see why they're going to have a match at WrestleMania. I'm not going to like it. I'm going to be honest with both of you guys. Right now, as I sit, I don't care about this really, only because AJ Styles is such a good wrestler, and he could do so much better. Why do we have to have Shane McMahon wrestle at all? I'm sorry, I just don't like it.
But, I mean, let's be honest. So there's nobody really there for AJ to wrestle against. They would have to bring somebody for him to that he hasn't, other than just shoehorning him in there with Dolph. Like everybody else on the roster that's a main player, he's wrestled with, or they're already involved in a storyline for WrestleMania. So there is nobody other than if, you know, there's still that possibility of, and I'm always going to say this until the match actually happens and Shane walks out there, there's always a possibility they could have somebody stand in for Shane. But, you know, and that's where the whole, the rumors of could they do AJ Nakamura at WrestleMania still being, you know, held alive for that, is that maybe Vince just decides, okay, well, I don't know that you have to actually have the match in person, but if they let him do a Hell in a Cell match last year, having a regular match with AJ is way less, you know, putting him in way less danger than he was in last year. But, you know, that's the thing. Like, maybe we don't want to see it, but it's really hard to say, like, what else is AJ going to do at WrestleMania? He's going to host it with the New Day?
I mean, a thing that they used to do in the old brand split was cross-promotional matches at WrestleMania. We haven't seen any of those happen so far. Or maybe it's just because they're intent on keeping the brand splits as separate as possible for as long as possible, but there is always that option if they choose to go that route.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, Raw is trying to fit a lot of people in certain matches, and I don't know how they're planning on going about some of these other things, but, you know, instead of, you know, Sheamus and Cesaro being involved in the tag, I would love to see Cesaro versus AJ or something like that. I mean, something like that would be excellent, but that's probably not going to happen. I don't know. I mean, you do bring up that good point, Sean. I mean, they're really on SmackDown. Everybody else has kind of got something going on, but I just it doesn't seem like a McMahon to give up his spot on WrestleMania. That's my only thought process right now.
I mean, the only thing that makes sense is if, like, let's say Finn is just not ready, as if, you know, they make it AJ and Joe or something. But that's the thing. Like, other than something like that, or Nakamura coming up from NXT, Shane McMahon is on a higher level than anybody you're going to put in a cross-promotional match with AJ on Raw. So that's where you have to think about it too. It's like, think about it. He was third from the bottom with Jericho in a feud that he'd already had a bunch of matches with Jericho in. At least he's going up on the card. Maybe not main eventing, but he's up on the card in a feud that they're going to base SmackDown around, with it being him and an authority figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it could be good. I mean, I don't know, Paul. I mean, I just,
Look,
Shane
if
McMahon
Shawn
has-
Michaels got Vince McMahon to a fantastic match, imagine what AJ can do with a McMahon that can actually move around.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to bring up is the fact that, last year against Undertaker, Shane did not do a bad job, right? I mean, he pretty much killed himself, but he didn't do a terrible job. And I'm not saying he's awful, but I don't know. I look at this as being a situation where it's kind of a opportunity, AJ Styles has got so many miles on him, and I wish he was in a better matchup, but I get it. This is entertainment. I understand.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever assumed that the match would be bad, but I think people are upset because it feels more, like you just said, sort of like a waste of his talent right now. Like he's arguably the best wrestler in the world. He is probably the most over guy on SmackDown right now. Because I think no matter where they go, he's getting universally cheered by everybody. So I don't know if the Shane McMahon is the best possible match for him, but if it is the only one, and it is a higher priority because it is a McMahon, but I'm kind of with you on the fact that I wish he had something much more, with some more sizzle, I guess, as far as the match goes, but I don't have a doubt in my mind that him and Shane won't be, I don't know about fantastic, but at least very good.
Yeah, especially because they're going to add some kind of stipulation in there too.
Shane's going to want to do something insane anyway, so.
Right. Ah, man.
I
I don't know that I
can
can argue about wanting to see that. I mean, I can't hate on wanting to see another Shane crazy moment. So, as moving on from there, we will now get to touch on the great moment from Talking Smack that Gary really wants to discuss here, as as we talked about last week, because they promoted this as a big deal last week, of John Cena and Nikki Bella teaming up for the first time against James Ellsworth and Carmella. Oh, I did want to say that before we finally get out of that thing with AJ, I really felt bad for AJ after he lost. Like, I was like, oh man, I wanted you to win. I wanted you to go to the main event of WrestleMania, and I could feel his anguish as he was kneeling down on the ramp there. So I think that they did a really good job of telling that AJ had to jump through all these hoops, and he couldn't do it one more time. So, totally understand his frustration there with Shane, even though, yes, it's not his fault. Another thing that I thought Daniel Bryan did a great job of translating into on Talking Smack was that, well, you don't really know how many times the guys lose and they come back there and they go, that's your fault, or whatever. And that was sort of a case of AJ doing that too. But, yeah, with this thing with Cena and Nikki, and I got to give James Ellsworth props. Not a lot of men will go around with the leopard tights on. James Ellsworth did that. So, props to you, Mr. Ellsworth, for looking like a fool on TV, even more than you already do. And you know what? This match was whatever. We kind of knew what it was here for. To get John Cena and Nikki a win so that they look like a formidable team. And, Miz and Maurice were already out there on commentary anyway. And, yeah. It's, Miz brings up a bunch of dirty laundry again. And it basically says that their love is fake and our love is real. And then basically on Talking Smack, he just goes on a big, long diatribe about a lot more than that. So, but it was great, and it was done in the, style of Miz just delivers every time he's on Talking Smack. And even Maurice got a few jabs in there too. So, what'd you guys think of all this here?
Go ahead, Gary, because this.
Oh man, okay.
This bugged me a little bit.
Okay, so I can't wait because that's what's awesome about this. So I'm sitting here praising it, and Paul may have some opposite effect, and that's what's fun. Let me tell you what I did like this. The match itself, let me just throw this out there. We know it was going to happen. Whatever. We figured, Cena was going to win, and they would. Here's the thing. I really enjoy the fact that if we're going to have this feud, they throw some serious barbs at each other. It's just like what happened over there when we had Nikki and Natalya, right? They're throwing some serious barbs at each other, maybe hitting below the belt in real life. I don't know. But I think that, what Maurice and Miz do here, and even on Talking Smack, more importantly to me, is they stand up for themselves and they kind of bring themselves back up to equal. Because I really felt like leaving SmackDown last week, it was almost kind of like John Cena just put Miz in a situation where he was James Ellsworth. Like, that's about how tall he looked against John Cena. That's about how much I thought of him. So, I mean, I look at this as being a better situation. Now they're kind of back to equal. All that, it just worked. And I can't lie. I mean, during Talking Smack, everything that really Miz was pointing out was kind of true. John Cena is a hypocrite. And I said this, I think, last week. He's just such a hypocrite on the fact that he says all the things that he says. You guys come out here and say the same thing to me. Well, guess what, John Cena? You say the same thing to everybody else every week. So it's just a deal where I'm enjoying it. It's something entertaining. It may not be my favorite thing going into WrestleMania, but it's, heck of a lot more entertaining than I kind of thought it was going to be.
Yeah, the stuff with Ellsworth and Carmella was what it was always going to be. Ellsworth doing the comedy shtick first, then opting out and not wanting to fight Cena because, look at the difference. That's fine.
Right? Yeah. I don't know that any of us are going to be walking up to John Cena like, "Hey, dude."
There is no woman worth that much, right?
Yeah.
And then the post match is what Miz. It's fantastic. I think everything he's saying feels like it's coming from a very real place for him, and I think that's the important part. The problem I have is that they only. Whether the promo was set up like this or Maurice doesn't feel comfortable doing a promo yet, but just her little bit added nothing for me. Like her bit with Nikki needs to feel just as important, just as vindictive as what Miz's problem with Cena is. And I know Maurice can cut a promo. We've seen her cut into promos before in her first run. And like I said, if it's just her not being comfortable to do that again yet, or she doesn't want to, or whatever. But I feel like if you're going to jump into this sort of thing on as big a stage as WrestleMania, Maurice needs to cut an equally, maybe not the same promo that The Miz is cutting, but she needs as much promo time as he does to establish the other half of this match. Because there's essentially two halves to a match here that you're working and bringing it together. And Miz and Cena have gotten the lion's share of the work here, and Nikki and Maurice almost just feel like they're added on. They're just tacked on little bits here, when that's really, I think, the opposite of what they're trying to go for.
Yeah, that's very true. But, the thing I want to ask is the fact that we've seen Maurice come and do what she does, kind of, really is just I don't want to say arm piece, but kind of an arm piece for Miz, right? And just kind of makes him a different guy than he was just by himself, and it's actually improved him. But I wonder if she came into the company realizing that they were going to ask her to get back in actually in-ring action. I think maybe she was coming in to think, I'm just going to be here. I really don't have to talk a lot. I just get the chance to be around my husband all the time. And now she's in this situation. So I do have those questions of, is she comfortable? Did she not prepare for this? Is she now finding herself in a situation, got to get back in ring shape? Or if she is already, what I mean by that is knocking off the ring rust. Or where is she at in that aspect? And not only that, having to cut those promos besides just being, waving, So I don't know, Sean. I mean, it's interesting. Paul brings up a point here that I think is valid, because I kind of honestly didn't even mention Nikki or Maurice a whole lot when I was just talking about how much I enjoyed this.
I think, Paul does bring up a point that it is, you got to deliver on both ends, right? I mean, yes, certainly, if The Miz and John Cena's part is stronger, then it can sort of carry the weaker part of Nikki and Maurice not being as sort of cold-blooded as the Nikki and Natalya feud was. So, I think partially it's also that we don't really have much of a connection to Maurice, right? Like, Maurice was gone, and she comes back, and like you said, Gary, she's sort of, we know that she's Mrs. Wife. She hasn't been wrestling, so a lot of the fans that have been watching now don't really know her as the former Divas champion Maurice. They just know her as Mrs. Wife Maurice. And so it's like, well, okay, we know that, but still, I do think she's mentioned many times that she was asked, I think from the beginning, to be a wrestler, and she said no. And then I think it's WrestleMania time, and they go, okay, Maurice just goes, oh, well, I'll do this one match. I don't have to really be in it that much, and it's no big deal. I think she just didn't want to go back to being a full-time, diva again and having to do all that stuff. So I do think there's a little bit of having to get used to being in that light of cutting a promo and having to do more than just... Now you have to make people feel something for that promo instead of just saying something to get to the next part of the segment. And that's different. So I totally get what you guys are saying there. The part on SmackDown itself it was okay. I didn't have a problem with it. It's just her kind of getting back at Nikki for what she said. The part on Talking Smack just felt really fake to me. Like, I can see where John Cena is saying those things, but I also can't. Because it's like, you're going to tell me that Miz never does that either? Like, the Miz is a freaking actor. First and foremost. Like, he never says, oh, wait, let me go back and we got to re-say this or redo this or whatever. So... I get Maurice being kind of upset about Nikki getting the executive producer thing, but it's like, for one, you've barely been on Total Divas. Number two, you're like a model and you've had your own stuff. I mean, I don't know what you really have a beef with Nikki. That's the thing. Like, Natalya actually has a legit beef with Nikki about things. Maurice doesn't have one. There is no, whatever Maurice says is her beef with Nikki, just doesn't feel real. Whereas Miz's feels totally real because a lot of us have been there for that time where we saw Miz be that guy in Eminem, and he was just the dude that nobody cared about or thought would succeed and whatever, and now he's become this guy, and he really had to fight tooth and nail, And the John Cena one he really had to fight tooth and nail too, like Daniel Bryan points out, but we don't really see it that way because he's been at the top so long, you forget about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it might just be that Maurice isn't comfortable doing promos or whatever, but I think, the majority of this whole thing is happening because Nikki kept running into Maurice backstage during matches and stuff, and like, if Maurice isn't coming from an angle of Nikki's trying to embarrass me with not only these attacks, quote unquote, that she did to me, but also, with her relationship and everything else of just trying to overshow me and embarrass me, then that's where the heat should be for, not just making up bullshit.
I totally agree with you.
Let me ask you this, Paul.
No, go ahead.
The question I have is how... Oh, no, sorry. How can we make this better? Maurice, like, do we have them basically play the part of, hey, I know Maurice is just going to take over for Natalya, where they just kind of trade barbs like this, or do you really feel like they can come up with something else that can really make them and their part more impactful besides just them doing this kind of, I guess you would call it Total Bellas type thing, just talking trash?
They're going to talk trash, and that's probably going to be mostly what this is. They can do some action here or there, but like I said, your talking needs to come from the actions that have already precluded where we're at right now. the whole running into her backstage after she got beat up by Nikki, where she gets shoved into her and the compact powder and all that goes freaking everywhere on her, or the attack during the False Count Anywhere match where she accidentally ran into her. But she needs to view these as an attack on her person, as trying to one up her, as trying to embarrass her. Like it doesn't need to be much right now. You still have 3 weeks of build to turn this into something more than just that. But for now, it's about the immediate actions that have already happened, and they haven't really touched on that. It's just been riding the coattails of what John and The Miz have been saying, which is fine. I mean, you're going to do that in a tag match, but there's a part of this that needs to be their own problems too, and that's where I'm having the most issue with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally see what Paul's saying. I just wonder if they're going to actually, they're going to actually just think that, okay, what Miz and Cena are doing can just carry it, and Maurice and Nikki don't really have to have this terrible, brutal part of the feud or whatever. Just, they're part of the match. But, we move on from this here. I already mentioned Mojo Rawley announced himself as the first SmackDown Live guy to be in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. We would then get Apollo Crews announcing himself as the second guy on Talking Smack. So there's two of those being there. Dolph does get in Mojo's face and kind of tells him, oh, well, you have to actually earn WrestleMania moments. You don't just get to have them happen to you. I guess that's Dolph's next victim is going to attack Mojo, which I'm fine with. Somebody else different on the lower card. Wonder if Mojo will get more or less out of it than what Apollo and Kalisto did, but we shall see, I guess. Anything you want to take from there?
I mean, Mojo actually has a gimmick, so he might have a chance of actually getting some sympathy. Like, there is a person there despite the crazy over-the-topness of the gimmick.
He's a human being, people. He lives, he breathes. And it is true, there is a gimmick there. I look at this and think to myself, okay, so you got Mojo, who is not very high on the card. You get Apollo Crews later announcing he's going to be a part of this. And forgive me if I'm forgetting, on Raw they didn't announce anything about the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. Did they, or did I just forget?
No.
Did I forget?
They did not.
Okay, so that means that far now...
Raw also had like 10 other matches that they were trying to make for WrestleMania at the same time, so...
Yeah, you've got a good point there. And they'll do this later for the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. But for right now, the way I'm looking at this is right now you got some mid-carders coming into this, and they're young guys. This just means that Dolph Ziggler is going to enter himself into this later on and say, basically, I'm going to get rid of all these guys, right? I'm going to toss them all over and show them that, they're not worth the time and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of see that as being the way they're going on the SmackDown side of this. So... just because of who they pick, right? So far, that's the gist I'm getting.
I mean, you're not wrong. So, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, this is a total filler thing for WrestleMania. It's a way to get all the people that are not going to have premier matches on the card, and I have no problem with it. They've done a good job of 2 out of the 3 years try to do something with it. I think with Baron Corbin, he's at least made it something. He's mentioned it, and he tries to make it seem like it's a big deal and whatever. The Cesaro thing just kind of, it died. But, I mean, it's a battle royal. So what are you going to do? I really do appreciate them making a story out of it, and that's something to give them credit for.
Yeah. And I hope at the end of the day, when we get to that point, that this storyline is important in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, but hopefully at the end of that match, we at least have something different than just this. Hopefully it's Nia Jax winning. We'll see.
What a shot to the whole male mid card of 2 shows. Nia Jax just comes in and knocks everyone.
I just think it's hilarious.
I mean, that would be WWE being really progressive, I guess. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, I just think it'd be kind of neat. Just going to see something different, right? Something that we would not expect. We kind of, it's not going to happen. I'm just.
It would be a great way to honor Beth Phoenix, right? Going in the
true.
Hall of Fame. I'm stretching at that point. But,
yeah, the trophy, I mean, realistically doesn't mean anything, so.
Yeah, isn't it just made of candy? It's just, wrapped in gold foil. So.
Yes, Andre the Giant's butt has all the candy in it. That's
oh, wow.
Hey, you know what? I don't know when that movie is going to come out, but now they have another reason to keep doing it, right? He's going to have his own movie. So, it makes sense. Look, again, I don't have, it doesn't take up much time at all, and it gives Dolph something to do. All the other guys are kind of wrapped up in other things, so I mean, it is what it is. Speaking of, Dean Ambrose and Baron Corbin continued their deal as Kurt Hawkins comes out to the ring to apparently, Dean Ambrose started this thing that he does not want to finish. I'm pretty sure Dean Ambrose finished it pretty well last week, Kurt Hawkins, but, he didn't face his own facts very well. So he had to go through them again. Dean Ambrose just clobbers him, then gives him a dirty deeds on the ramp or whatever as he's leaving because Baron Corbin won't answer his challenge. Ambrose even says that Baron Corbin has no testicles. Well, what are we? We can't say balls, but we can say testicles. Is that how this goes? WWE.
Scientific term, I guess, is how they get away with it.
True, I guess. I did like a Baron Corbin's promo of saying, "Look, I don't come out here because you're telling me to. I come out on my own terms, and trust me, you don't want to deal with me." And then Baron Corbin goes and puts Dean Ambrose, pulled a Mick Foley special. He puts him under the forklift and traps him there. And the referees have to force him to get off him and everything else to try to get him out of there. And I did appreciate Renee sort of showing concern on talking smack for him because they did, do the whole thing where Miz kind of revealed that they were together, and then they really didn't do a whole lot with it after that. So appreciate that little nugget there.
I mean, largely, I didn't have a problem with this. The content of the promos and everything wasn't anything to write home about, and it felt like what they were trying to do with Dean was just trying to make him seem like he's coming from wherever weird-ass place he comes from whenever he cuts a promo. So, whatever. But, I mean, the attack was brutal enough. The forklift thing seemed lame. Like, you could easily tell that thing was not all the way down crushing him. Like,
yeah.
For me, it took me out a little bit. Like, it was painfully obvious. So,
yeah, it's one of those things. It's just proof that don't do what you see on TV. And Baron Corbin did something that saw on TV possibly, and affected someone else. And I'm talking about the Attitude Era when Mick Foley did something like this to The Rock, but. Yeah, I think that looked a lot better. From what
they had the wooden pallet thing on there that he could literally just stand on to pin him.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a little bit different, and Paul's not wrong at all. It didn't look all that great, but you kind of play along, right? It's like when I play with my daughter and we play pretend. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is happening, even though it's obvious.
Yeah, I don't understand why they didn't have the pallet there, because with the pallet you can put him underneath it, and that'll shield him a bit, whereas you have just the forklift there. You can't smash him under the forklift because, I mean, that's going to be hurting him that entire time that he's under there.
Mm-hmm.
The pallet will make it to where, okay, now I'm just basically hiding underneath a thing of wood. It's not that big a deal. So, I get it.
It also distributes the weight
That
Right.
way you can actually put it on him.
Yeah, it's just. I don't think they were. I think they were just thinking of this is maybe a better visual.
Visual, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about camera angles and having that visual for video packages going into WrestleMania. You know, outside of the whole forklift thing and the way this all worked, I mean, I think the thing that really helps us the most is the fact that you do have Dean Ambrose. Because let's be honest, Dean Ambrose is very weird, just like Paul just said. And of course, you got Baron Corbin, who's weird and uncomfortable in his own skin at times. So I think that this kind of adds something to this that they kind of needed. There's a little oomph there. There's also that, that poor Ambrose, he had broken ribs, and now he's going to have to come back and he's going to try to fight Baron Corbin. And, you're going to have a reason to understand why Baron Corbin's getting the better of him and all this other stuff. That way, neither guy loses too much, right? So I get all that, and I think that's the direction they're going, which... anything that they can do to help these guys is going to be very important because I still think the fans may like Ambrose to an extent, but I think we're still trying to get behind Corbin or to at least have interest in what he's doing. So maybe this is their best option. I don't know. It's kind of for me. I'm not super invested.
I can understand that. Yeah, it's still not to that level where you're really just wanting to see this, but they have time to. They have a couple weeks still, a few weeks here to still fine tune this and see if we can ramp up the intensity a bit.
Yeah, and you know who got a raise out of this whole thing? Renee Young. She got a raise because Vince saw her sit there while her boyfriend's, bleeding at the hospital internally. She decided to do her job, so Vince is like, "That's right. WWE's more important than anyone." So, good for her.
I think she alluded to that too. Like, well, I'll just check on him when we're done with this show. Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. He may have internal bleeding, but who cares?
Yeah.
So the last thing that was sort of a major deal here is they even announced it as a headline for SmackDown is Alexa Bliss's Blissrotation to find out who is going to be her opponent for WrestleMania 33. And I think because of how they set this up last week, we all kind of could see where this was going. And that is what happened here. They had Alexa Bliss come out with Mickie James, and she brings up, all the women that she's faced, that Naomi is feeling the ow. I did like that. And then here comes Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch says she's going to beat her. Alexa Bliss not a big fan of that. And then Natalya comes out, and Natalya challenges her again for a title match. And Alexa Bliss wonders if Natalya has gotten into some catnip, which I thought was the line of the entire thing. And because this wasn't a great segment, but that was the line of the entire Bliss rotation. And basically, we find out that she was going to give Mickie the title shot for being her friend, basically, and helping her out. The other ladies are not a big fan of this. Daniel Bryan comes out and says, well, Alexa Bliss, you're going to wrestle everybody on the SmackDown Women's roster. So is Eva Marie going to come back at WrestleMania 33 now? And yeah, we're left with this happening to Alexa Bliss. Then Daniel Bryan ends the segment by saying, hey, I'm channeling my best Teddy Long, and we're going to have a holla, holla, holla tag team match. It's just a tag team match playa. It's not that hard to say. But, okay.
Daniel Bryan's just too white. He's just too white.
I guess. I mean, I'm sure Teddy Long is like watching this at home like, oh yeah. Like, holla holla, I'm going. They mentioned me on SmackDown. But the match went like 12 or 13 minutes. It went like almost 2 segments, I think. And, it was good. I wouldn't say it was, anything standout or whatever, but it did accomplish the Natalia, because I was worried that we had really fallen down to the low point of the women again, where we were going to supposedly suddenly forget that Natalia was a heel, but thankfully they remembered that, and they had her sabotage Becky, Alexa and Mickey win, and then Mickey's like, oh yeah, hey Alexa, thanks for screwing me over. Mick kick, and here you go. Here's our Smackdown Women's title storyline going into WrestleMania. Let's see if Naomi recovers enough to be involved. And I mentioned her already, but maybe this is it. They're waiting for the big moment. Even Marie comes back. I don't think so, though. I don't think I've seen her talk about wrestling on her Twitter in months. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I think those rumors of her being gone are probably more likely true.
I would think so too, just because I don't. There hasn't been any indication, and they usually give you a little something if somebody is going to come back. I thought the promo part of this was a little weak. Obviously, this wasn't Alexa Bliss's best stuff, but it felt sort of like something you would have gotten before the Women's Revolution, where it's just all sort of catty bullshit that leads up to the match, and that's whatever, I guess. I mean, that might just be a really small fling, but it sets up, I think, what they're after, which is if a woman isn't in a feud or anything like that, you get to go for the championship in a big cluster F of a match. So here you go.
Yeah, and this is something that you guys are both right. This whole promo segment wasn't great. It was what it was. You got a direction. You understand that the whole Mickey James and Alexa Bliss thing kind of had that crack, and it kind of cracked and broke apart now because of the fact that there were broken promises involved. But, I think overall, as I look at this and I think to myself, having everyone involved in this match, it's not a smart thing because it's just going to be chaos. It's not going to be all that exciting. I just personally don't think so. So what does this tell me? This is a match that maybe I just don't care about, even though I think it also makes Alexa Bliss look like the babyface in a way, because guess what? She's fighting everybody. And so...
Well, everybody attacked her. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I don't know. I mean, of course, I think that, it's got to be something where they need to get as many people on the show like you alluded to, Sean, before. The one thing I will say, though, is if I was in a feud, I would immediately be out of that feud so I could be in this match. I would all of a sudden just start shaking everybody's hand. I'm so sorry for what I said, and I attacked you. Here, let's hug. All right.
Well,
hey,
you can just all attack each other in this feud, though. That's the great thing, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying, because, if you're already in a feud, you can't be a part of this. I mean, so I would immediately be out of it, but... yeah, I mean, maybe you can. Maybe Nikki could still run down there somewhere.
Well, that's the point. They sort of alluded to, like, Nikki could technically still be in this match because he said everyone on the women's roster. So, like, could Nikki wrestle twice? I mean,
no, it's happened before, so why not, right? So, I don't know.
The true Iron Woman, Nikki fella.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I hate to say it this way, but this division was going pretty good, and I was really enjoying it. And now all of a sudden, I'm just kind of like, wow, I'm not enjoying it now. I'm just kind of not there now.
I mean, most of the feuds have finished up, and they're trying to move on to other stuff. So, I mean, just wait for it to heat up again at this point. But they still got 3 or 4 weeks to get something going here. So I got faith. Keep the faith, Gary.
I know. And now you make me want to sing that song. Gotta have faith,
Yeah.
The Limp Bizkit version, though, not the other version.
Wait, well, why not the George Michael version?
It's sad still to think that he's gone. So
okay,
that takes me to sadness. So.
I mean, it makes me sad that we had to talk about Limp Bizkit on this show. But
hey, come on, they were good at one time, at least in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. They were at one time. It was like the Attitude Era was good at one time, and then it by itself might have also ruined wrestling. Just like, Limp Bizkit might have ruined metal. So, anyway, I think we sort of covered everything on SmackDown. So, all we got to do now is give the show a rating. What do you think? Better or worse than Raw?
I don't think it was a 4. Main event was super good. I obviously having to not sit through an extra hour of bullshit is helpful too, but everything's still building somewhere, but this still isn't the greatest episode of SmackDown I think I've ever seen, and I think really outside the main event and a few other things here or there, it's not much of a show to really write home about. 5.5.
That's kind of the way I feel too about this show. And, I wanted to be with you guys tonight to really talk about Cena and Miz and see what you guys were going to say, because I knew we may have some differing opinions about stuff like that, or we may all agree. I didn't know. But besides that, and a great, like Paul just said, a great main event, everything else was just kind of there, and I just didn't care, and it was just kind of like, man, I'm just getting through this episode. I think it's a 5 is a perfect rating. I mean, it was better than Raw, but not as terrible as Raw, and it wasn't that good.
I don't think it's that low. I mean, you still had a freaking great match between Randy. I mean, it wasn't great on the I think we're barely touching the great term here, the 4-star level, but that's a match to go back and watch, and the other matches are not anything really out there, but you have one standout thing. You have build to WrestleMania, even if it wasn't greatly done. But I sort of also figure in talking smack into this, and I do think the Miz part of SmackDown was spot on in both times. So I'm gonna say a 6, just because it was 2 hours. Nothing was like harmful to your soul to watch, and you just get through it and move on. So that's speaking of getting through it and moving on, we are going to do just that here for this SmackDown review. Hopefully next week we'll get more heading into this WrestleMania, and who knows what else is going to pop up here. But until then, of course, you can always decide to listen to our 205 live review that we do after the SmackDown review, or you can go and listen to the Raw review, or the W10 Part 1 episode, or the W10 Part 2 episode, where we are going to preview the New Japan Cup 2017 and give our predictions. Or no, that's not on this show. Damn it. I screwed myself again. So, anyway, you can listen to the ROH 15th anniversary predictions that Gary and Paul gave on the Part 1 episode. That pay-per-view happens on Friday, if you want to check that out. And we will be talking about whatever's been happening in the world of wrestling since our last show on that Thursday show. And who knows what else can we have. We already know we have to talk about a sad passing of a wrestler again. So,
Quit it,
man.
2017.
Yes, please.
It's too early in this year. Like, how much more are we going to take?
Oh,
But,
my. I'm going to have to go put Mean Gene in safety, hiding somewhere.
Hey, that's certainly someone you want to get. You just go cryogenically freeze them. That way you won't
Hey,
know
that would
it.
be awesome.
Just look at his face every time you think of great interviewers. So anyway, before so we don't have to end this on a sad note. Until next week's SmackDown, we will see you later, everybody.
Later.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.